faithfully convey, value, and interpret great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. In this episode, we'll explore William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury. Faulkner's hometown was Oxford, Mississippi, also translated as Oxford. This town was tiny. Just how tiny, you ask? In Faulkner's own words, no bigger than a postage stamp. But this obscure village would become world famous through his writing as the fictional Yoknapatawpha County. As Chinese writer Mo Yan recounted, it was after reading Faulkner that he decided to transform Galmi Northeast Township into a literary kingdom. Faulkner moved to Oxford at age 3, born with a free-spirited, rebellious nature. He dropped out in 11th grade, later claiming he never liked school, skipped ball games often, and never got caught. A year later, his childhood sweetheart, Estelle, married another man. This rejection devastated Faulkner, seemingly triggering his lifelong alcoholism. 2 months later, to join WWI, he faked a British accent and documents to enlist in the Royal Air Force. He returned soon after when the war ended, yet boasted of combat heroics and faked a war injury, though nobody bought his stories. In 1919, Faulkner entered the University of Mississippi through his father's connections. But his freedom-loving nature prevailed. He dropped out again his sophomore fall. Reasons vary: excessive absences and poor grades, like his D in English, or alleged debauchery, though I believe he simply chose to leave. Yet, young Faulkner's ties to Ole Miss continued. After a New York stint, he returned as postmaster. This was a permanent position reported to Congress, a secure job with routine work like sorting mail, handling newspapers, selling stamps, etc. However, our future great writer might be the most incompetent postmaster in history. Letters and packages he handled never arrived. During work hours, he read books all day, and customers claimed that the books he later published were written while at the post office. An even more exaggerated claim is that he treated the post office as his own home, opening whenever he pleased and closing for owner's business when he wanted to drink or play ball. So he stayed at the post office for 3 years until one day he woke up deciding to dedicate his life to writing and submitted his resignation. His resignation letter read, "As long as I live under capitalism, I feel my life will always be at the beck and call of the rich. But if every person who can spare 2 cents for a stamp can order me around, my life is ruined. That is my resignation." After that, Faulkner went to New Orleans, Louisiana, and then to Europe. And during this time, he wrote 2 or 3 immature novels. In the autumn of 1928, Faulkner, just turned 31, began writing. After completing a true novel, he said this work required no editing, not a single word or punctuation mark changed, marking. His mature masterpiece is The Sound and the Fury. In 1949, the Swedish Academy awarded Faulkner the Nobel Prize in Literature, citing his powerful artistry and unparalleled contribution to contemporary American fiction. Now that we've covered Faulkner's life, let's talk about The Sound and the Fury. Actually, the story of The Sound and the Fury isn't complex. The Compson family was once a prominent clan in Jefferson's southern U.S., but has now declined. And old Mr. Compson, though bearing the title of lawyer, was idle his whole life, constantly drowning in alcohol. His wife was full of resentment, indifference, and utilitarianism toward life. She kept lamenting that she was once a Southern belle. This obsession with status was both a mental refuge she desperately sought amid harsh reality and deepened her pain and sorrow. The family had 3 sons and 1 daughter. The novel's core revolves around the daughter, Caddy, who secretly dated men, later became pregnant, and didn't even know the father's identity. This isn't considered shameful in the American South. As per local expectations for women, the only way was to quickly marry another man to cover up this stain. Caddy did exactly that But after marriage, her husband discovered the secret and eventually abandoned her. After that, Caddy left her illegitimate daughter with the Compson family and went alone to the big city. But Faulkner didn't tell the story directly. He didn't even write Caddy's part straight on. Actually, it unfolds from the inner perspectives of the three sons using Faulkner's stream of consciousness technique. Um, Simply put, he presents characters' inner monologues without rational processing. No cues like I think, and timelines are chaotic to capture genuine feelings. Now let's take a closer look. The first part is from Benji, the youngest Compson son's perspective, and it's the most stunning section of The Sound and the Fury. Why is this stream of consciousness stunning? Because Benji has mental retardation. The narrative is set on April 7th, 1928, his 33rd birthday, but he has the intelligence of a 3-year-old. What's the stream of consciousness like with a 3-year-old's intelligence? Faulkner shows us that Benji often misinterprets words and confuses time. When Lester, the black servant, brings Benji back past the old Compson golf course, now sold, Benji hears Caddy yelled, which sounds like his sister Caddy's name. So he hums excitedly. And this is presented through what others hear. It's not that I'm humming again, but Lester beside me says, listen to how ugly your humming sounds. Later, when passing through the fence, Benji's clothes get caught on a nail, reminding him of when Caddy helped unhook them. But because it's stream of consciousness, this time shift has no cues. After Lester in the present says, wait, you're caught on the nail again, immediately followed by Caddy unhooked my clothes and we slipped through. This actually goes back to 1928 years earlier, the day Caddy helped him deliver a love letter to Mrs. Patterson from Uncle Maury. So, although this part describes Benji's 33rd birthday, it suddenly reveals the entire Compson family's framework and Benji's genuine emotions. Critics say that because Benji is mentally challenged, people don't pretend around him, revealing their true selves. Thus, Benji becomes the moral mirror in the book, reflecting others' true natures. Perhaps we should add that because Benji can't conceal or lie, he also authentically presents these people's characters. For example, we see the black servants caring deeply for him, especially Dilsey, who treats him like her own child for decades, while Benji's own mother remains cold and harsh. A crucial moment in the memories is Benji's name change. When Benji was 4, his mother discovered his disability and changed his name from Maury to Benji. Because Maury was Mrs. Compson's brother, she didn't want her foolish son tarnishing her family's reputation. Caddy, as Benji's sister, largely filled the role of providing missing family warmth. Even at age 5, Caddy would still carry him upstairs. She persisted, despite their mother's cold remarks, while their father remained an alcoholic and irresponsible. The indecisiveness of eldest brother Quentin and the selfish cruelty of second brother Jason all emerge through Benji's inner monologue. Though covering just one day, this section carries immense narrative weight through Benji. This idiot figure is one of 2 common character types in 20th century Western literature, the other being the madman. 17th century English philosopher John Locke once said, madmen put wrong concepts together and reason from them, while idiots have no presuppositions and make no inferences. Benji embodies this exact archetype. Notably, Faulkner connects past and present through Benji's hypersensitive senses, imbuing them with symbolic meaning. For example, when Lester holds vanilla, Benji associates it with the tree scent that always reminded him of Caddy, Faulkner subtly using smell to imply Caddy's moral decline. When Caddy began Secret Rendezvous, Benji cried because he could no longer smell the tree scent on her. This hints that Caddy's innocence is under threat. Caddy changed her scent because she started using perfume. At first, twice, she threw it away, hugged Benji again, and he stopped crying. But when Caddy truly lost her innocence, Benji still cried. He didn't make any loving gestures, just touched his own face. You can see that Faulkner's storytelling is completely different from previous realist writers. Part 2 is Quentin's stream of consciousness on June 2, 1910. At this time, Quentin is a freshman at Harvard University. By the way, the golf course Benji passed by earlier was sold off because the Compson family needed to pay for Quentin's tuition. Quentin wanders the streets of Cambridge, preparing to kill himself, deeply tormented by his sister Caddy's downfall. The stream of consciousness begins with the watch Quentin inherited from his grandfather. When his father gave him the watch, he said, "This watch is the tomb of all hope and desire." He mentioned that human experiences are fallible, even useless, and time is unconquerable. Quentin listens to the watch's ticking, essentially accepting his father's nihilistic view of life. He is being conquered by time. The most crucial part of this inner monologue is the day his sister lost her innocence. From a personal perspective, Quentin and Caddy were very close as children, so he couldn't accept her loss of virginity. And from the Southern tradition, he saw his sister's chastity as the family's honor, not to be tarnished in the slightest. In the Southern region, people have always advocated that men should protect the women in their families. So his sister's loss of virginity made him feel he had failed his duty as her brother. When she first gave herself to someone, Quentin was terrified. He hoped his father would step in to resolve it, but unexpectedly, his father told him that chastity is something men invented and not worth mentioning. Quentin didn't believe it. Instead, he sank deeper into an obsession with purity. Before he went to Harvard, Caddy got pregnant and didn't even know who the father was. Quentin dueled with one possible candidate, Dalton, but ended up fainting. His indecisiveness and weakness caused him great trauma. He thought about killing his sister, but couldn't bring himself to do it, unable to face it all. He even went to tell his father that he had committed incest with his sister and that the child was his. Using this psychological explanation, Quentin tried to convince himself he'd still fulfilled his duty to protect his sister, just as if his sister faced hell's punishment for losing purity, he could at least join her there. But after his father saw through his lie, Caddy married a morally bankrupt man to hide her pregnancy, was later exposed and abandoned. All this intensified Quentin's torment. Before Caddy's wedding, he repeatedly pleaded, "Don't marry this scoundrel." Yet alone, he had no real way to help her. These memories weave through Quentin's present as he wanders the town. By the river, he overhears children chatting, then meets an Italian girl buying bread. The girl speaks no English and seems lost, so he helps find her family. Calling her little sister along the way, he subconsciously seeks connection to Caddy. But this deeper link is agonizing. He holds her hand, thinks it's dirty. What truly haunts him is Caddy's impurity, then suicidal thoughts electrify him. Delirious, his speech fragments, until the final bell chimes, bringing dark silence. Quentin chooses to sink into the Charles River's depths. In his subconscious, had Caddy ended her life this way, to cleanse her sin, family shame could have been erased. Since she wouldn't, he'll take her with him, his only achievable heroic act. He enacts a secondhand tragedy. Here, Quentin struggles not just with Caddy's lost innocence and family honor, but with time itself, richly symbolic. One scene, before suicide, Quentin asks a black attendant to deliver a letter, likely his will, tomorrow. Quentin repeatedly stresses tomorrow, a deeply theatrical moment. For Quentin has no tomorrow, while this northern black man beside him does. We've now covered both Benji's and Quentin's streams of consciousness. Next, let's dive into Jason's stream of consciousness. He is Caddy's brother Benji's brother, and Jason is the mother's favorite because the mother feels that Jason, who's selfish and has strong material desires, most resembles her own family. This part's narrative time is April 6th, 1928, the day before Benji's section. Jason's inner monologue is straightforward. He lacks the kindness and warmth of his brother and sister, so he has no struggle or pain at all. For instance, this section starts with Caddy's illegitimate daughter being fostered at her mother's home. Little Quentin skipped school again. The mother worried the school might think she neglects the child, harming her reputation. Jason not only pointed out she never cared for this granddaughter, but also griped about taking time off work to find the kid, all in a very cold tone. The mother cried in grievance, and his reaction was muttering something like, "Now she's crying again," cursing even her own flesh and blood. There's almost no remnant of Southern traditional values left in him. He doesn't value family honor, has no moral bottom line, and even extorts money from Caddy using his niece's name. When little Quentin asked Jason for the money Caddy borrowed, he only gave her $10 and pocketed the rest. When little Quentin said she urgently needed the cash, he superficially asked why, but didn't really care, just to shut her up and stop her probing how much her mom borrowed. Jason's life is all about pragmatism. This whole chapter centers on his business dealings. In the face of profit, everything else takes a back seat. Ironically, tragic dependency. Ironically, the declining Compson family now relies entirely on this morally hollow person. Some critics say Jason symbolizes a turncoat to Northern industrial capitalism. From this angle, Faulkner expresses deep despair for the South in this novel. Southern traditional culture is indeed insular and twisted, a heavy shackle, but if wholly abandoned, it loses its soul and has nothing to cling to. Part 4, the novel's final section, follows the storyline of Dilsey, the old black maid. This part's time is April 8th, 1928, the day after Benji's 33rd birthday, and it happens to be Easter. This is the only non-stream of consciousness chapter in the book. It narrates the Compson family's decline through a third-person omniscient perspective. Mrs. Compson is critically ill on the brink of death. The eldest son, Quentin, weak-willed and paranoid, ultimately ended his young life through suicide. And second son, Jason, is utterly amoral, a profit-driven zombie, while youngest son, Benji, is intellectually disabled. But in stark contrast, Dilsey is strong and capable. Though constantly treated harshly, she remains loyal, steadfast, and wise, largely due to her Christian faith. This section begins with a broken window at the Compson house. Jason and Mrs. Compson suspect the black servants broke it, but Dilsey denies it. Then, since Caddy's daughter Quentin didn't come for breakfast, Jason suspects she'll take Caddy's borrowed money, so he snatches Mrs. Compson's keys and rushes upstairs. Later, when Mrs. Compson and Dilsey go up, the room is chaotic. Little Quentin has fled, likely after Jason hit her. Yet Dilsey still follows Easter tradition, dresses beautifully, and takes her family and Benji to the black church for sermon. Meanwhile, Jason searches everywhere for little Quentin. From a traveling show troupe, he learns little Quentin may have run off with one of their boys. The novel ends back with Dilsey, Luster, and Benji. Like at the start, Benji excitedly hums at hearing Caddy because it reminds him of his sister. Dilsey tells Luster to care well for Benji. They drive the carriage onward. The book concludes with this scene. At this moment, Benji's blue eyes are vacant and serene again. Telegraph poles, trees, windows, porches, signs, everything is orderly once more. All right, the story's done. You might think The Sound and the Fury doesn't tell an epic tale. Why does it hold such high status in literary history? Let me put it this way. Plot isn't this work's important layer. Reading The Sound and the Fury is like watching willow catkins drift in air. Only after finishing and reflecting can you assemble these fragments into a complete picture. Faulkner's stream of consciousness focuses on evoking impressions of Southern life, not grand events. What's the advantage of this approach? First, it gives the novel an extremely rich texture. The novel's title comes from Shakespeare's tragedy, Macbeth. Life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Translator Lee Wen-jun rendered sound and fury as the sound and the fury, perfectly capturing the novel's atmosphere. From this perspective, Faulkner's work is profoundly ambitious. It appears to chronicle a Southern family exposing its original sins during the Civil War and declining through inevitable economic transformation. But in truth, it also explores modernity's themes, echoing Marshall Berman's observation that all that is solid melts into air. Here, solid things primarily refer to the Christian-centered moral order. Nietzsche's declaration, God is dead, wasn't a beginning, but a conclusive proclamation of traditional morality's collapse. The novel's four-part structure actually conveys this meaning. Now, except for part 2, Quentin's section parts 1, 3, and 4 span Good Friday to Easter, April 6th to 8th. Part 2's date, June 2, 1910, is the 8th day of Corpus Christi. Even Benji's age holds deep significance. Benji is 33, Christ's age at crucifixion. The only character spared spiritual crisis is Dilsey, the Black Maid, because she maintains unshakable faith. Even Mrs. Compson discriminates against her own son. Regarding Benji, Dilsey would say, in God's eyes, there's no difference between an idiot and a sound person. Her unwavering love and dedication are profoundly moving. In contrast, everyone else, selfish, depraved, or cowardly, wallows in original sin's swamp. As Lee Wen-jun noted in the translator's preface, these modern figures violated Christ's final commandment to his disciples, love one another. As mentioned earlier, Faulkner primarily employed stream of consciousness, a modern literary technique to penetrate characters' inner worlds. Previously, realist literature's narrators resembled omniscient gods, speaking for characters and controlling them. But modern writers viewed this puppet show approach as filtering out characters' most authentic intuitions. Thus, Faulkner chose to lay characters' raw intuitions bare before readers. It's less about factual accuracy than the authenticity of perception. For example, we know autumn has arrived, not by an announcement, but when we step outside and smell the osmanthus blossoms one day. This is the truth stream of consciousness seeks to reveal. For example, we know autumn has arrived, not by an announcement, but when we step outside and smell the osmanthus blossoms one day. This is the truth stream of consciousness seeks to reveal. The novel's 4 chapters aren't chronological but follow a scrambled CABD structure. The final chapter deliberately uses traditional narration to conclude the novel with calm resolution. Critics note this mirrors symphonic structure. While not easily accessible, The Sound and the Fury is undeniably a masterpiece. The Nobel laureate Albert Camus hailed Faulkner as the world's greatest writer. Reading this novel confirms his praise isn't excessive. That concludes our interpretation of Nobel laureate Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury. Until next time,